What would you do if the person you trusted the most shattered your heart and then blamed it all on a drink? Stay with me till the end to uncover a story filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and a painful choice no one should ever face. Liam believed he had everything a man could ever want: a cozy home filled with warmth, a job that paid the bills, and a wife he adored more than life itself. Her name was Isabel, a woman whose laughter could fill a room and whose touch felt like home. They met in college, two hearts colliding in the chaos of youth, and from that day on, Liam was certain she was his forever. Their life together was painted with moments most people only dream of: late-night talks under starlit skies, lazy Sunday mornings tangled in bedsheets, and promises whispered in the dark. Liam worked tirelessly to build a future for them, taking on extra hours, believing that every sacrifice he made was for their happiness. But while he was busy securing their tomorrow, he missed the silent distance growing between them today. Isabel often complained about feeling lonely, her voice light but laced with something Liam couldn't quite place. He brushed it off, thinking a vacation or more date nights would fix it. After all, every marriage has its rough patches, right? One evening, Liam decided to surprise her. He cooked her favourite meal: creamy pasta with garlic bread, lit candles, and even played the song from their wedding. But Isabel came home late. Her hair was messy, her lipstick smudged, and there was an unfamiliar scent lingering around her, a mix of cheap cologne and regret. She stumbled slightly as she entered, her laugh forced. "Sorry, I lost track of time. Drinks with friends," she said, waving it off as if it meant nothing. Liam smiled, hiding the small knot tightening in his chest. He believed her. Why wouldn't he? Trust was the foundation of their love, or so he thought. That night, they sat in silence, the flickering candles casting shadows that mirrored the cracks beginning to form between them. Liam didn't know it then, but that uneasy feeling in his chest wasn't just exhaustion. It was the first whisper of a truth that would soon shatter his world. And Isabel? She was already lost in a secret she couldn't hide forever. The days that followed felt different, though Liam couldn't explain why. Isabel's warmth had faded, replaced by a coldness that crept into their conversations, their touches, even the spaces between them. She was there, but not really. Her laughter sounded hollow, and her eyes, once filled with light when they met his, now looked past him as if searching for something he couldn't give. Liam tried to ignore it at first. He convinced himself it was just stress, maybe the monotony of routine dulling their spark. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that something was wrong. Then came the night that shattered the illusion. Isabel had gone out with friends again, or so she said. Liam stayed home, scrolling mindlessly through his phone, trying to shake off the unease that had become his constant companion. Hours passed, and when she finally stumbled through the door, her excuses felt as fragile as glass, easy to see through, easy to break. She left her phone on the kitchen counter without a second thought, its screen lighting up with a message Liam couldn't ignore. "Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you." His heart stopped. His hands, almost moving on their own, picked up the phone. What he found wasn't just a message, it was a window into a world he never thought existed. A world where Isabel wasn't lonely. She was lost in someone else's arms. The texts were filled with secrets, with passion, with words she hadn't said to him in months, photos, plans, confessions, all there, staring back at him. Liam felt the room spin. His breath came in sharp, shallow gasps as the reality sank in. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was a choice, a deliberate betrayal wrapped in lies and hidden smiles. When Isabel walked back into the room, Liam was still standing there, her phone in his trembling hands. The look on his face said it all. No words were needed, but he spoke anyway, his voice a whisper fighting against the scream in his chest. "Who is he?" Isabel froze. For a moment she looked like the woman he married, caught, vulnerable, real. But then her face hardened, and she sighed, annoyed more than guilty. "It was nothing, Liam. I was drunk. It didn't mean anything." Those words broke him more than the affair itself. She blamed it on alcohol, as if being intoxicated could erase the betrayal, as if it turned vows into suggestions and love into something disposable. Liam didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stared at her, realizing the woman he loved was a stranger wearing a familiar face. The silence after Isabel's excuse was louder than any argument Liam could have started. He stood there, gripping her phone like it was the last fragile piece of their broken life, his mind racing but his heart eerily still. "I was drunk. It didn't mean anything." Those words echoed in his head, twisting like a knife, as if the betrayal was a minor accident, something that could be washed away with weak apologies and blurred memories. But Liam wasn't drunk. His pain was sharp, clear, and unbearably real. He finally broke the silence, his voice low and trembling, not with rage, but with heartbreak. "Isabel, was it really just the alcohol, or was it something more?" Isabel avoided his gaze, her eyes darting to the floor, then to the wall, anywhere but at the man she vowed to love forever. She crossed her arms, her defenses rising like walls Liam never thought she'd build between them. "I don't know," she muttered, her voice flat. "Maybe I felt trapped. Maybe I needed to feel different, alive." Alive? The words stung as if their life together had suffocated her, as if Liam's love had been a cage instead of a home. Liam took a shaky breath, his heart pounding against the walls of his chest. "Trapped?" he whispered, his eyes searching hers for a flicker of remorse, for any sign that the woman he loved was still in there somewhere. "I worked every day to give us everything. I thought we were building a life together. And you were looking for an escape." Isabel's face softened for a split second, but guilt was fleeting. She shook her head, frustration replacing regret. "I didn't plan it, Liam. It just happened. We were drinking, and one thing led to another." "That's not how it works," Liam snapped, his voice finally rising, not in fury but in disbelief. "You don't accidentally fall into someone else's bed. That's not the alcohol, Isabel. That's a choice." His words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Isabel had no response. She just stood there, arms still crossed, her silence saying more than her excuses ever could. Liam realized then that he wasn't fighting for his marriage anymore. He was fighting against the truth, that the woman he loved had already left him long before her body did. Without another word, he turned away. The weight of betrayal felt heavier than any suitcase, but he packed one anyway. Not because he wanted to leave, but because he couldn't stay. As he closed the door behind him, he heard her voice one last time, soft and distant. "Liam, I didn't mean to hurt you," but she did, and no amount of alcohol could blur that fact. The days after Liam walked out felt like a blur, a haze of emotions too heavy to name. He found himself staring at the walls of a small, rented apartment, surrounded by silence that used to be comforting but now felt like an endless echo of everything he'd lost. The bed was too big, the nights too long, and his heart, well, that felt like it had been left behind in the ruins of his old life. At first he thought the anger would keep him going. It was sharp, raw, and alive, unlike the numbness that crept in when the rage faded. But anger is fleeting. It burns bright and fast, leaving nothing but ashes. What lingered was something colder, disappointment. Not just in Isabel, but in himself. How did he not see it? How did the man who knew every curve of her face miss the cracks in their marriage? Isabel texted him often at first. "I'm sorry. Please come back. It was a mistake." Each message chipped away at him, not because they pulled him closer, but because they showed how little she understood the damage she'd done. One night, after too many sleepless hours, Liam answered her call. Her voice trembled on the other end, filled with regret that sounded more like fear of being alone, not fear of losing him. "I miss you, Liam," she whispered. "Can't we just start over?" Liam closed his eyes, his chest tightening. He wanted to scream, to ask her how she could be so blind to the fact that some things, once broken, can't be put back together. But instead, he said softly, "I miss who I thought you were." And that was the truth. He didn't miss Isabel, the woman who made excuses, who broke promises and blamed it on alcohol. He missed the version of her he had built in his mind, the one who would never hurt him. Days turned into weeks. Liam stopped checking his phone. He stopped waiting for the ache to disappear because he realized heartbreak isn't something you cure. It's something you carry until it becomes part of you, like a scar. But here's the thing about scars. They mean you've healed. Liam started doing things he'd forgotten he loved. Morning runs, painting, something he hadn't touched since college, and even sitting in coffee shops just to watch the world move without him feeling stuck. Little by little, he reclaimed the pieces of himself that had been lost in the shadow of their relationship. One evening, as he watched the sunset from his apartment window, it hit him. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't sad either. He was just free. Isabel had been the love of his life, but Liam was learning to be the love of his own life. Months had passed since Liam walked out of the life he thought would last forever. The sharp sting of betrayal had dulled, replaced by a quiet understanding that not all endings are disasters. Some are beginnings in disguise. On a cool autumn morning, Liam found himself standing on the same beach where he and Isabel had once exchanged vows. The waves crashed against the shore, indifferent to his heartbreak, indifferent to everything. But for Liam, it was more than just a beach. It was a symbol, a place where promises were made and eventually broken. He stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the horizon. The ocean didn't care about his pain, and strangely that comforted him. Life moved on. The tide came in and the tide went out. Just like people, just like love. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Another message from Isabel. "I miss you. I still love you." Liam read it without flinching. There was no surge of anger, no flood of sadness, just nothing. And that's when he realized he was finally free, not just from her, but from the weight of what she'd done. Betrayal had once felt like the end of his story, but standing there with the salty breeze brushing against his face, Liam understood it was just a chapter. A painful one, yes, but not the final one. He didn't respond to Isabel's message. There was nothing left to say. Closure isn't always found in words. It's in the quiet decisions we make when no one's watching. Liam turned away from the ocean, the wind at his back, and walked toward a future he hadn't planned for but was ready to face. A future where his worth wasn't tied to someone else's mistakes. A future where love wasn't about holding on to what hurt, but letting go of what no longer fit. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting to fix what's broken. It's walking away even when your heart wants to stay. And that's exactly what Liam did. Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below.